You've definitely heard this question about evolution, right? It's one of those questions that seems to poke a giant hole in the whole theory. It gets right to the heart of who we are and where we come from. And today, we're going to unravel it completely. There it is. Maybe you've asked it yourself. And you know what? It's a totally fair question. It seems logical. If A turns into B, how is A still around? It feels like a real puzzle, one that seems to challenge the very foundation of evolution. But here's the secret. The entire question is built on a misunderstanding of what evolution actually says. It never claimed that we evolved from the apes we see swinging around in zoos today. The real story, well, it's way more interesting. It's not a ladder. It's more like a gigantic, sprawling family bush. So let's just dive right in and clear this up. We'll call it the monkey misconception, because once you really get this next part, everything else just clicks into place. Okay, so here's the absolute key. We are not the descendants of modern-day apes. Think of us more like cousins. Millions and millions of years ago, there was this ancestor species. It's extinct now. At some point, its population got separated, and two groups went down two totally different paths. One branch eventually led to modern chimps and bonobos, and the other branch, well, that one led to us. The easiest way to picture this is with the classic tree of life. Imagine the trunk is that ancient common ancestor. That trunk splits into these huge branches, and those branches split again and again and again. We're way out at the tip of one tiny twig, and chimpanzees are out at the tip of another nearby twig. We're not below them on the trunk, we're all out on the edges together, just on different branches. So asking why apes still exist is a great question. But to really get the answer, we have to look at the engine driving this whole incredible process. We need to understand how life actually changes and branches off in the first place. So how does life actually change? Let's get into the mechanics of it, the engine of evolution itself, the process that Charles Darwin so famously figured out. And that process is natural selection. It's not some kind of magic force. It's actually a pretty simple and really powerful idea. When creatures have babies, their genes get passed on, but sometimes with tiny, random little changes, mutations. Now, if one of those random changes just happens to help that creature survive in its environment, well, it's got a better chance of living long enough to have its own kids and pass that helpful new trait along. Let's make this super simple with a frog analogy. Picture a bunch of brown frogs living in a really green jungle. One day, a baby frog is born green because of a random genetic fluke. Now, a hungry bird flies overhead. Who's it going to spot first against all those green leaves? The brown frogs, right? They stand out. The green one has a way better chance of hiding, surviving, and eventually having its own little green baby frogs. Over thousands of generations, the whole frog population can become green. That's natural selection, right there. Now, this brings us to that super famous phrase, survival of the fittest. A lot of people hear that and think it means the biggest, the strongest, the most aggressive animal is the one that wins. But what Darwin meant by fit was completely different. It's not about being the strongest. It's about being the best fit for your specific environment, like a key fitting perfectly into a lock. And this just goes to show you, fitness is totally relative to the situation. For a dinosaur, being huge was a great fit to scare off predators. But after the asteroid hit and food was scarce, being smaller and needing less food was suddenly a much better fit. A polar bear's thick fur is an amazing fit for the Arctic, but it would be a disaster in the Sahara. For our own early ancestors, having less body hair was a fit trait because it helped them cool down while hunting on the hot savanna. See? Fitness is always, always changing. Okay, so now that we've got the how down, let's zoom way out and just appreciate the absolutely epic scale of this story. We're going to take a super quick tour through 4 billion years of life on Earth. Buckle up. Think about this. 4 billion years ago, life gets its first spark. For almost 2 billion years, simple life just did its thing. Then, bam, the Great Oxygenation Event literally changes the entire planet's atmosphere, which paved the way for more complex life. Wow. Much later, the first animals show up. Then the first mammals, which were these tiny mouse-like things hiding from dinosaurs. And it was only when the dinosaurs got wiped out that our own primate ancestors finally had a chance to come out of the shadows and really start to branch out. And the most important thing to remember here is that none of this was a straight line. It wasn't a march of progress towards some perfect goal. Every single one of these moments was a fork in the road, a branching point. Some branches thrived, some died out. It's a story of constant experimentation and adaptation in every direction imaginable.
And that brings us to our final idea. And honestly, it might be the most mind-blowing one of all. This whole story isn't just about ancient fossils and animals in some faraway jungle. It's about you, right here, right now.
43%. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. What on earth could that mean? Well, the answer is you. Get this. Less than half of the cells that make up what you think of as your body are actually human cells. The rest, bacteria, viruses, fungi, a whole community. We are quite literally walking, talking ecosystems built on billions of years of shared history with other life forms. So you see, the question we started with was actually way too small. It's not just that we share a relatively recent ancestor with apes. If you go back far enough on that giant tree of life, you find out we share an ancestor with every bird, every fish, every mushroom, and yes, even the bacteria living in your gut. We're all related.
You know, there's this incredible line from a documentary called All That Breathes that just captures this idea perfectly. And what's so amazing is that it's not just some nice philosophical thought. It is a literal scientific fact. We are all part of one ancient, deeply interconnected community of life. So we'll leave you with this to chew on. If we all really, truly come from that same ancient spark of life, how does that change the way we see the world? And how does it change our relationship with everything else that lives and breathes right alongside us? It's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.